Welcome everybody, and this is just short interviews that we are going to be doing before the conference with the speakers. Thank you very much, Conor, for being here, for being part of the Rfvs as well. And I guess you all already know me. I'm the president of Rfvs for now. It's Amaya Spindola here. And also speaker, I don't know, I might be interviewing myself in the future.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Not just kidding.
Looking forward to that one.
And well, we're going to talk about a little bit about the future generations. But before we get into it, I just want to tell you that on the website you have the membership if you want to get discount for the tickets at the conference. Also, we have 2 crowdfundings because we want to be there on the London Vet Show and all the events possible. And also for research, if you want us to, start saving money for research and get the proper research that natural, real food deserves, this is the way. You have £4 for Paws, and the crowdfunding for LBS is to help vets to accept raw feeding. So again, thank you and welcome, Conor. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thanks for having me. I am itching to go. I love the topics that are being talked about this year, and I love the speakers. Obviously, many of them are people that you know, and so I'm excited. I'm buzzing, and it's a good time to be speaking. You can feel the movement growing every week, and so it's good time to be in the business.
So what is your perspective on real raw feeding for the next generation? And when I say next generation, it's puppies, kittens, and also a little bit of professionals.
So I think everything's on the right track, to be honest. I think there's more and more good quality products available that people can feed to their little pups and whatnot. And I think that's really important. To bend this towards my talk, you see an awful lot of chronic gut conditions in young animals, very young animals. They have this naive immune system, and once you come off what mum gives you, if you're eating chemically preserved food products and heavily medicated, and then you're moved home in that first couple of weeks, that's an enormous stressor on the gut, and you get this chronic bit of diarrhea in the dog, and the treatments that are recommended for that might be medicines, when actually just a simple change in diet would actually, and a bit of rest and R for the dog, rest and relaxation would probably get the dog over this monumental upheaval in his life. And so that's a really tricky time, and it's quite a common thing that I hear as a non-vet, as the nutritional side of things, a dog that has this chronic gut issue. And I always move it back, and you see, when did this start? And it's 10, 12, 14 weeks. And so I believe at the best start, and the most important thing for young dogs, is starting on a real food diet ASAP, if the breeder can move them onto real food. And I think things are going that way. There's now groups setting up natural breeders, natural raw feeding for puppies. And so all this stuff is being set up now. So that's clearly the most important thing for the generation. Get them onto real food. I'm obsessed with that. And from a biome point of view, it's critical. You've got to get this normal stuff going through, and the immune system learning who's goody and who's a baddie, and so that is all done by exposure to these things. You can't just wrap them up in a bubble.
So that means that we have to change a little bit also the way we do medicine, more individualized, more thinking about each puppy, each kitten. Yeah. And what about professionals? What do you see? Because you had an article on your blog about it, or on social media. What do you think about this relationship between professionals and clients?
Yeah, I think when you read what the studies are saying, any little reviews of the temperature in the veterinary industry, there can be a little distrust is increasing from the public. There's a deterioration of trust, and maybe of communication between between client and vet, and that's not a good thing. You need to have a great relationship with the vet or doctor who's in charge of your health, who's looking after you. They're on your team, you're paying them, and so that's a sad way to be. But I can understand it's gone that way, because this whole with conventional veterinary pushing dry food on people that probably know a little bit better than that, they would kind of distrust then. So I can understand the start of it. The problem is that dissolves or deteriorates into people blaming vets at the coalface. And I think that's a massive problem. I think it's a big mistake. I think the vets, the people that you touch and talk to are real, on the same team as you. They got into this business to be, it's so difficult to study to be a vet, to excel. You have to be 100%, literally 100% in your exams in Ireland. It's just under actuary. It's way higher than human medicine to get into veterinary. Very difficult ask for kids. So there's specific types of people that get in. Then you've got an impossibly difficult degree to teach you every part of every animal in 4 or 5 years. And then you're thrown into clinic. And if you're on your own, to manage people and bills and employment and all these different products, and as well as trying to treat these animals, incredibly big ask, and they're not driving around in Porsches. So people need to kind of adapt. I think what our ire and our anger should be directed at the levels above. I think perhaps we have a problem with the veterinary industry in some facets of it, not all, in just in some facets, with the link to industry. And that's a problem where I can say this, speaking freely as a non-vet, I think there's a big problem with pet food companies sponsoring veterinary departments and that kind of thing. So they come out parroting the silly messages. So my problem will be with the veterinary industry. It's not with the person at the coalface. I know this person cares just as much, if not more, about animals than I do. So they are our friends. So I think upping the compassion and love for these people that you're talking to, trying to get them on side as best you can. It comes to a point where it's not working. Okay, that's a different conversation for perhaps you and Maya and stuff. Yeah. I know you're doing a lot more on that, but I think people that have that knowledge of this simple kind of thing, feeding dogs real food, I think we need to take a step back and take a breath and say, this person is not in it. They're not recommending the dry food for the money, the tiny little margin you get in a bag of dry food. They can have the same margin on some raw dog food. That's not the reason. They honestly believe it's good for your dog. And we need to think of the best way around that. And with the Rfvs putting out nice little information and smaller articles and bringing them in and saying, look, here are vets that are, they're also vets and they're pushing out this message. Check out the studies that they use. Look at their positional statement. Just and then come back to them next week with a smile on your face, because you will get them on side. So a little bit more love and understanding, I think, is definitely needed from the non-vets, from the public like me. And so I've been guilty of it. I get annoyed by it, but I now, and I think most of us realize, it's the industry. Sorry, long answer, but a very important point.
No, I mean, it is interesting because as a vet, I had, I recommended at a certain point, I was recommending certain dry foods, and this was kind of, when I learned about raw feeding, it opened my eyes, because suddenly, you get mixed between science, what you read in the groups of, because science is too big. Let's say when you read studies in the groups of vets that, they have their own forums and discussions and all those things, you read a lot about kibble and processed foods. And then when you start reading raw, you get mixed in another world that it's completely different and more open, so you don't know where to trust, and that client is also putting all your trust in you. So you have to combine a little bit of the science and a little bit of the common sense that I call, and try to get there. But I think instead of putting the fear in front of us and say, just because I know this works, I'm just going to tell you this, and I'm not going to give you my opinion. I think we should open our conversation more into saying, look, this is what I've been reading. This is what I know. This is, maybe you should try, because real food, we know, as humans, we are trying to get more into the real food. So why not trying? So if you have this open conversation as a human being to your other human being, which is the client there, instead of talking from, this level vet and the client, maybe we can get better results and learn from the experience. So that would be my goal as a, I'm a second opinion vet. So usually when I get the clients, they are already annoyed. So I have to soft that out and say, look, this is what is going on.
I've heard that before. Is it that the more natural, more holistic vets are second opinion vets? Because you go to your conventional vet, and when you are annoyed enough you then go and find somebody practicing the dark arts. And so
Yes,
they
exactly.
come to you with an unhealthy opinion of what's going on, and you have to then spend the first half an hour of your conversation talking them down from the ledge and listening.
Yeah.
And that's another problem. We've got these consults with vets that are 10 minutes long, and our doctors with
Mm-hmm.
their kids 10 minutes long. What could you possibly know about me and this skin rash on my face? Is it stress related? How am I doing in my job? How's the relationship?
Yes.
You know what I mean? All these questions come into this. You meet somebody with a dog with IBS, IBD. How many times do you end up talking to them and hearing that they have a terrible bowel condition, or their child does, or their husband does? And it's like there's things going on there that takes a bit. So I can imagine when you get this client that has so much to say and is a little bit angry, it takes a while to cool off.
It takes.
So
Yeah.
now your consult is
And
very long, and it's hard to
yeah,
charge all that.
it's
Yeah,
yes, that's the issue. They say that first of all, holistic, that does not mean always only get into the, to the weird and juju things
yeah,
that
yeah,
people
of
talk
course.
about. Sometimes it's only looking at the whole system and trying to ask where the lifestyle of the animal is, and other things that usually in the 10-minute consultation you don't get the chance to do.
Yeah,
So then you have to spend a lot of time talking about the other colleague that you cannot you cannot just bury him with all the comments and all, because they say really bad stuff, when they're really annoyed. And
yeah,
I can understand, but I also understand why the vet suggested
yeah,
what he said. And so you are kind of in the middle ground here and trying to manage the situation. And
yeah.
then it takes at least an hour, but then once I finish the consultation, I take like 1 or 2 other hours to do the report, because then
Ooh,
I think about each animal. And
yeah.
that's the other thing. I just take a time to say, okay, this cat lives in this situation. Maybe instead of this probiotic, I might use another one, or maybe instead of this, or also the economic situation of that person. You take in
Yeah,
consideration so many things that is why holistic vets are more expensive.
it's so interesting. Like, yes, the more interesting, the more expensive. The word expensive, like I started getting into the product end of things when I was making raw dog food, and you have to learn quickly about cost and value and expensive. And I remember a guy saying, when he looked at my food I was making 10 years ago, and he said he was looking at it and he looked at the price and he goes, "Tell me, why are you doing this?" I said, "Oh, I want dogs the world over to be better fed and to be healthier." And he goes, "You're going to fail." And I was like, he was an economist, 70-year-old economist on a little cane, like something out of Star Wars. And he says, "You're going to fail." And I said, "What?" And he goes, "You haven't got the right attitude. You're going to fail." And he goes, "How much is your product?" And just as I was about to answer, he goes, "You're too cheap." And I knew he was right. I was sounded too cheap because I wanted people to be able to afford it and buy as much as they can and to be competitive with the stuff being sold in vets. And he said you will sell it too cheap and your company won't thrive. And if your company doesn't thrive, you won't help millions of dogs. You'll be a tiny little thing and you'll work your back off and you'll be stressed and your relationship will suffer. And it's like, all that was so true. And it took 1 or 2 more people to tell me it before you increase the price, and people go, "Oh, you're too expensive." And you go, "Hang
Yeah.
on there a second. Behind that product is incredibly good ingredients. You're comparing fillet steak to Weetabix. You
Yeah.
cannot compare our to breakfast cereal and a chicken. It's just different food sources, different calorie
Mm-hmm.
sources. And so expense is an interesting thing. So they say holistic vets are expensive. It is crazy, because the reason I do consults, and the reason I don't want to do consults anymore, is because I spend maybe an hour and a half talking to the person on Zoom. The first half an hour is just pure you talking them down, and then an hour of what I think is going on, going through the whole questionnaire, maybe an hour and 15 minutes about. My problem is that it's the half hour minimum after that I sit there thinking about the person, thinking about the situation, thinking about the things they told me, looking at my notes, and then choosing the right products based on what I thought was going on, the right approach, sending them the email, getting
Yeah.
questions back from the email, and the support for the first week or two, particularly with chronic gut conditions where it's
Mm-hmm.
tricky. What is actually going to work here? And so it's all the enormous amount of time in the tail end of the consult that you struggle to bill for. And you just can't do it. And they see the price at the front end and go, "Oh, my vet is only €70." And well, how's that
Yeah.
working for you? How is that €70 working out for you? There's a saying, they say, you think we're expensive, wait till you try a cheap person. And I thought that that's in trade. If you think we're in plumbing and an electrician, if you think this he's an expensive electrician, wait till you see how expensive a cheap one is, because you'll keep going back and back and back. So that's a big problem vets have,
Yes,
the front
yes.
end, to kind of say, this is the value we're offering you. We're trying to offer you a fix, but you can't promise that. So very
And to add to the other stuff, you know, the burnout and all the pressure. So yes, there is a lot. And also I believe that we are not taught to be a business as vets.
yeah.
We learn
Yeah.
a lot about treating animals, but I think, and if anyone with a university hears this, you know, it's good to start teaching us as how to build a business, because it's it's a big important point. As you mentioned, we all are thinking of cheaper prices, competitive prices, because this is what we learn. And also we have this mindset of saying, this is what I can afford, instead of thinking how much I value for what
exactly.
I'm learning, you know? It's a tricky situation.
One. And as your price increases to justify the amount of effort you put in, you know you're alienating some people that need help. You know that's a fact. Because I would need to invest so much of my time into you to fix you. And I know that that's going to push, they'll look at me and go, I can't afford that. And that's a killer. It's very, what an emotional, and then for you guys to run a normal practice after that with staff and all the other conventional kind of approaches and the successes and failures that go with it. I mean, the failures, as few as they are, you have more success than failure. I still remember the failures, and I still think of those dogs, and I think, oh my God, they're suffering. And it's an awful, so it's no surprise why vets are under such pressure. This is a very tricky situation. And so when a massive snowball appears, like this nutrition and the huge implications on health from all the cancer that we're seeing in cats and dogs, not all of it, obviously, but the massive increase in cancer in pets, cats and dogs, pancreatitis and kidney disease, and on and on and on. You know, it couldn't be, diet couldn't be playing a major role in this. That just can't be the case. They can't face this because we've got all this other stuff to be dealing with. And now I have to stand up and say, hands up, I've been recommending the wrong stuff here and creating an issue. That's a huge thing from a mental ego, not in a negative point away. Everyone's got an ego. Yes, but it's a massive thing for the ego to turn around on top of everything else I have to do. I have to learn about nutrition now. Very tricky, very tough situation for vets. So I sympathize greatly, and needs more flexibility, needs more bandwidth. Something needs to be done, because the reviews of vets at the moment and their situation and their stress levels is appalling. Like, nobody should have to go through, after all that work to get into this profession, to suffer that badly. That's just not right. It's not right to use people like that, use kids like that, just because they want to work with animals, and then they churn them through. And then the increase in corporate ownership of veterinary, of some corporates, not all. There's plenty of well-run corporates. God knows there is. They keep the manager in place because it's a profitable business, because it's being done well. But there is a big problem with that too, because some corporates that you mightn't want to be taking your instructions from Ronald McDonald, you know, let's face it, the answer is burgers and fries, and it's Ronald McDonald telling you, there's a few questions. And so so that's a problem, and they are beholden to their shareholders. It's not a local vet beholden to the guy he sees in the supermarket and, oh, how you doing, how's the dog? These are people that, you know, it's shareholders, and they have to make money. And if you have to make money, you have to sell more product or jack up the prices. So that's a problem. And just there's so many issues. I can't believe we're talking so much about vets, because this
don't worry.
But it's such a crucial conversation that people kind of know this stuff mentally. But when your dog is sick, I don't care about all your problems. I want my dog fixed. You know, it's like, if my kid is sick, I'll skip the line. I don't care. I want this kid fixed. You know what I mean? I'm not going to wait. You're just going to come in there bullish, going, you said you were going to do this. The kid is still sick. You're wrong. Now give me the right answer. And suddenly you're on this very defensive, ready to attack, you know, position, because your kid is sick. So yeah.
I remember I have because I don't treat my own animals, because of, you know, I can't think straight with my my own cats. But every time I take them to my colleagues, my friends, they say, you are the worst client ever.
No way.
Because it's like, sometimes I go to, I have a conventional and then a holistic as well, you know, for different things. And then especially the conventional, he says, you're so annoying.
I know I am. This is
And
why
I said,
I need
this
help.
is what I like, and this is what I'm teaching my own clients that
Yeah,
I'm sending
yeah,
to you. So remember that.
yeah.
You
That's
will
mad.
recognize them.
Yeah. Oh, it's like, I've got it's the same, like, I come from a behavior background, and I was a guide dog trainer for 5 years, and I've got this dog and he's a head case. I mean, he's lovely and I love him, all that. But I am a father of a problem child here. And as much as you love them, you're
Yeah.
like, bloody relax. And so on a weekly basis, my wife is begging me, we need a dog trainer. It's like, I am a dog trainer. And anytime I talk to a dog trainer, they're like, you are just the worst. You are just the worst dog trainer I've ever met in my life. And I'm like, I realize I'm doing everything wrong. But he's just so needy. He's so attached to me. And he'll just, if I get up for a
Yeah.
cup of tea at 11 o'clock at night, the dog's, oh, where are we going? Where are we going? And I'm like, sit down and relax. Everybody else is relaxing now. So I know it's me, but you still think
But it's your dog.
it's a spaniel. It's a spaniel. They're mad. Cocker spaniel, mad dog.
Wow.
Bloody
Yeah.
hell. Anyway,
Yes. Well, okay. Well, before we get too far away from
yeah,
what we are here
yeah.
for. So about your talk, because this is the probiotics, it's kind of a how do you say it? I forgot the word that I wanted to say. It's now being challenged, the way that we're using probiotics in a general sense, and also we are now knowing a lot more about microbiome and using a specific bugs for specific purposes. And so what is your take? What are the main points of your lecture for the conference?
Yeah,
Not too much spoiler.
I think there is, when we hear of a new thing, we are mad for it. We love a new thing. And, one stage it was coconut oil, and the next stage it'll be something else. And then this stage it's like, it's probiotics. It's, oh, great. And you start putting probiotics into your dog. And I would say, I'm not a microbiologist. And when you talk to them, you realize how little you know. An example, I was talking to, I think her name is Professor Kathy Brown. I'm sorry if that's not her name. She's in Manchester University. And you're chatting to her, and she's the skin biome. That's her field, skin biome. And so I asked her a question about gut biome, and she goes, "Oh no, I don't know anything about that." And I'm like, "What?
What?
You skin biome?" And she goes, "Yeah, but it's just totally different. It's a totally different landscape, and I don't know." And I'm like, I just couldn't believe that's what happens when you specialize. All specialists will say that, because when you realize, how complicated the ear is, you're either doing the outside bit or the eardrum or the ear canal. And once you're in that specialized field, oh, I don't know anything about the outside part of the ear. And it's when people don't know anything, they're so sure of themselves and they're so loud, and they write quite convincing pieces. But let me tell you, as a non-microbiologist who really his tail wags about all the things that are out there with gut flora, it is a dark art in that we don't understand 80% of the biome. We don't know what it is. So that is dark matter. It's like when they look at the universe and they say, 80% of the weight of the universe, we don't know what it is. It's just dark matter. Don't know what it is, but we know it's there. And it's the same with the biome. So horses and cats and dogs and humans, we know about 20% of it. So when we say, yeah, and the other 80%, we're not quite sure what's going on, but we'll sell you the solution to the 20%. So there's the biome stuff is really interesting. There's so many cool, exciting frontiers, great studies. Clearly, the biome is important. I'm not going to do any spoilers here, and I'll give you a quick breakdown of the stuff. But there's many frontiers, and now they're doing like single strains for specific diseases and whatnot. And in all that, in the middle of all that, are people going, what products do I need? And so I like looking at the product end of things, and my talk is about that. It's in 3 different sections. The first one is diagnosing if you have a gut flora issue, because it's only if you have an issue that you need to take probiotics. You don't need probiotics in a healthy dog. Don't be using them. Spoiler alert, I'll be making a big scene about that in the talk. But there's many different kits, and there's standard kits out there. There are kits that they look up the DNA of what's in your poo, and they try to find out. But, those kits have big problems. You've got a lot of pathogenic bacteria that aren't in the poo. They just stick to the wall of your guts, and they're not going to come out in the sample. And you have a number of other bits and pieces, questions with these kits. You go, how accurate is that? They change with every single meal, your gut flora, every treat. As soon as you give it a different food source, your gut flora changes. And so what are you analyzing? And if you might have a different biome to me, Amaya, but we can get the same results out of it. So that's a massive problem with the kits. And then what comes after that is the solutions that these companies are providing. So one will say, we'll sell you fecal transplants and capsules. Another will say broad spectrum probiotics off the shelf. Does it matter if you use a cat or a dog one? Or should we go for single strain? And then there is people that say, forget all the products and just use food to get yourself out of that solution. So there's many ways to fix the problem. What's the best way for you? So I look at the pros and cons of the kits being out there, the solutions that are being used, some of the cool advancements in probiotics, autogenous probiotics, where they make it from your own gut flora. And there's lots of cool things, but there's a few little questions where you go, is there any use in that particular situation? Do you need to do 2 kits before and after? So there's a lot of money being spent, a lot of products being created, and I would say there is ever more question to critically analyze those and go, what is that from a vet's point of view and client? What should the vet be promoting? What kits might you stock? And as a client, what might you spend your money on? That sort of thing. That's what my talk is about. It's value for money, as we started the talk with today. It comes down to that. What do you actually need to do here? What are the studies saying? Because the studies are getting increasingly confused when they do a systematic review, which is a look back over all the studies that have come up. Very helpful things. Groups like the Cochrane Institute do this wonderfully, and they look back over the studies that we have, and they can stick them together to make one big study. And that's really valuable. And they look at the high quality studies, randomized controlled trials. So they're really high value studies. They're the ones we don't get when you're buying dry pet food and most drugs. They don't like to give you RCTs. They're the high value stuff. What are the studies saying when you look at probiotics and look at the RCTs? That's very interesting and changing all the time. So I want to touch on that as well. So
that will put a question on all the ultra processed foods with biomes and and probiotics and things like that. So because it's so general
it's a huge thing. And Hill's Pet Food have a product come in. They have one out at the moment where they brag about the fact there's some probiotics in it, and you'll go, it's on top of an ultra processed food source with questionable quality fats and vitamins and minerals and stuff that bacteria mightn't want to live on. Some groups will live on it, and it's chemically preserved with chemicals to stop bacterial growth, and they put some probiotic on it. So it's just a nonsense way of saying, oh, this is good for your dog's gut. I'd love to see the RCT behind that, because there isn't. They'll have a tiny talk about the study that's used to support that exact product. But this is nonsense. It's like, here's, chemical napalm for your gut flora and a tiny little one species of bacteria. Not work for your dog. Because there's hundreds in there. I mean, have you just given them a carpenter when they needed an electrician? Or maybe moved in the complete wrong people into the housing estate and they don't like each other? Who knows? But to suggest that is the way out of their biome issue, because studies show when you compare dry and raw fed dogs, they're very different biomes. There's more species diversity and, all the things you expect. And so the lower inflammation in raw fed dogs is most likely coming from the fact that the gut is happier. So there's less, like a house on fire, so when you keep that gut happy, you've got significantly less inflammation in the body. And so that's probably where the huge decrease in inflammatory markers in raw fed dogs, it's probably where it's coming from. So dry food has that problem, and adding in a little token probiotic is not the solution. It's not. You've got to come at probiotics completely different way. You probably don't even need any products. That's the spoiler alert. It's like there's many very effective ways out of this that don't involve all the nonsense they're trying to sell you in packets. And so that is really important to understand.
And you use a key word, which is inflammation, something that it's overlooked in the gut sometimes. Usually they said, okay, just give you a probiotic in an inflamed gut.
Yeah.
Exactly. What do we do with that?
Yeah, exactly. Why was the gut inflamed? What's going on? Maybe your dog's licking rat poison every single morning, and you're inflamed. Take a probiotic. And so people want this. They want the thing in a capsule, and they want to take it, and they want the symptoms to go away. But holistic medicine is like, why have you got those symptoms? Because a plaster on gangrene is a dumb way of trying to solve gangrene. You're coming back every week for a nicer smelling plaster until the gangrene gets you. So but we want that, because chemicals, the 20th century was so effective at coming up with cool little pharmaceuticals that would just knock off that symptom, you know, the opioid crisis and everything else. We want the symptoms to go away and quickly, and we don't want to have to think about our diet or exercise or stress or sleep or all that boring crap. I
Yes.
just want a pill. Give it to me now. And I saw the advert on TV, so I want this pill. And that's a lot of stress. I'm sure vets have that.
And not only for chemical stuff, also for natural superfoods and supplements as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
There is a whole business behind it as well. Now
Yeah.
that we're still looking for the pill, but
Yeah.
now the natural source.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, good point. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
That's definitely right. Yeah, definitely right.
Okay. So just to wrap it up a little bit, tell me, I know you're up to something right now. Just, you know, it's your time to promote yourself and have a.
Ooh,
That's fun.
I have a couple of little things on the hop at the moment, and I'm really hoping they will be out before I do the talk in November. So look, one of them is this type of yeast product, which is just amazing. You will, as soon as I have it ready, you're all going to hear about it. I would love to get back. I'd love to do a second part of the book that I wrote. That there would be great, but the second part, it needs more help because it was just too much. I would love something. So I don't know what that is, but that instead of, I've already written a great deal of this second book, but I have a way of putting that out that people can pick my brains without actually talking to me. And so I am just about to release that too. So I think by November I'll be relieved to have a few of these things. Thanks for giving me a chance to talk about those things. I appreciate that. But yeah, let's see if I get them out before November.
I'm very excited about the yeast product that you
yeast
said
product is amazing.
Because in cats, that's something. I mean, when we talk about raw in cats, is always a challenge. So you have to be open to the fact that they might get to wet food and that it's a win-win, right? So I heard about some yeast products to use, and I use them a lot as a topper, but it's good that I hope that the product that you're developing can be used in cats as well.
It is. It's for dogs, cats, and horses. First noticed horses, yeah. But I think with the yeast thing is very interesting because like a lot of the yeast problem can be a gut biome issue where when the biome skin access, when the biome goes to hell, the skin flora can go to hell, and it creates this space for a yeast issue. So sometimes when you see a malesthesia common yeast issue, it's like, why did your dog get that yeast issue? Everybody's got hot ears. A lot of dogs have hanging down ears, but they don't have yeast conditions. Yours does. And so sometimes you'll find that actually the gut can lead to these issues. So which is the smoke coming out the windows of a burning house, you know. So
exactly.
So sometimes a yeast solution is actually internal rather than external. You can treat it topically. You need to because it's such an annoying thing. Can you imagine? And but sometimes actually the focus could be elsewhere. But the solution isn't just like a herbal solution, which there is a number of things you can do there's a number of articles you can read for killing yeast because it's a tricky little thing. Once it grows, it knows how to hide away, wraps itself in cellulose. And so even that alone, just understanding that if you want to kill yeast, you have to digest that cellulose. Yes. And animals can't digest cellulose. So you have to take digestive enzymes that digest it with cellulase, and you expose the yeast to your natural compounds that kill it. So that's my way of doing yeast. But this new product is completely, you'll when you hear about it, you'll go, I just cannot believe that it's patented by a group. And it's just totally natural way. I don't want to say any more about it until I bring it out. It's so exciting, and it's just so effective.
It sounds really exciting.
And I say, like, if you've got any studies, boom, 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 here's all the studies. I'm like, oh my God, this is the perfect, because it's such a common book. So I'm excited to bring that one out. I can't wait.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for your time.